Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Welcome yet again to another wonderful edition of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It's always a privilege to come to you and to share life-changing business and life education. Hopefully we can enthuse, we can energize, we can inspire and empower you. And do I have a great guest for you who can do just that? My guest is Lepang Ferguson, an entrepreneuress, if you could call her that, local Geno, and she will actually introduce herself much better than I can. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We're always honored to have busy people take time out of their busy schedule to come and share with us their wisdom. By way of introduction, do you care to share your background and tell us what you do?
Absolutely. I am an entrepreneur, like we talked about it a little bit. I have had my own business for about 11 or 12 years now. But I've always been more inclined to the media industry. So I studied media and design. And in the past, I'd say 20 years, I've dabbled in a lot of things within the communications space. So from event management to production, television production, I was a news anchor. I produced different segments within news and current affairs around the continent. So it wasn't only in Botswana. So a lot of my experience, I would say, is in communications and in media. And I'm a self-taught designer in a lot of areas, although I studied graphic design primarily. But I've allowed myself to use that skill to just broaden my perspective on anything else that is of interest to me and different markets.
So a question that arises from that is, your first degree, is it on graphic design?
Media and design.
Okay.
Yes.
From which university?
University of Canberra.
Wow.
Yes.
That's in Canberra is in
It's in Australia.
Yes,
University of Canberra, and I studied media at Swinburne University of Technology. So that is in Melbourne.
Okay.
Erra.
And how long have you been dabbling in this industry?
I would say since I was about 21, so I'd say 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Erra.
So when you say you've all been all over the continent, where have you been and in what capacity?
For about a year and a half, I was working as a content producer and executive producer for a company that was, it's called Pamuzinda Productions. It's in South Africa, but I was producing East African content. So it's called Iron Africa. It was on the Sky Network for a number of years.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to talk about a purpose-driven life or being purpose-driven. This is a subject you chose, obviously, and which I agree with. It's very important. But I want to hear from you why you have elevated it to the level where you want to share it with the viewing public.
I think one of the things that I have discovered, and especially in working with people, working with small businesses, as I said, I've been in the communications industry for a long time. So servicing small businesses and finding out what they are actually trying to do. A lot of business people, a lot of entrepreneurs still don't really have that in place. And I think I learned that as I was growing, that it's important to define your business and understand its purpose. So you actually have to understand the purpose of what it is that you do in order to be able to grow it to the level that you're envisioning. Most entrepreneurs don't do that. They just do it out of passion. I want to do this because I like it. And then they realize that, like can also lead to hunger. And
yes.
that's not a nice thing,
Yes,
because there's no
starvation,
defined purpose for the business and how it's going to impact society. So whether there's a demand for it or you are creating a demand for it, those are two aspects of understanding the purpose for your life and business, because it has to be something that you want to do for the long term, not something you want to do just now and kind of pass through.
Let us be a bit granular for a moment and just
Absolutely.
understand or explain purpose. Let's explain it the way we'd explain it to a child.
Yeah.
What do we mean, and what does it mean to have a purpose?
I think that your purpose is your underlying why. The reason why you're really here. And is it something that you find yourself being able to be committed to, and get to the end of your life and say, I've done it. I've done what I came for. So that is really what a purpose is. It's something that you can define yourself as and know that, it hardly changes. You remain pretty much the same with the same foundation, I think, and fundamental principles as you grow and as you get older. So that is your fundamental purpose.
Yes, using your life as a template, would you be able to define your purpose, and is it something you would like to share?
Absolutely. I believe my purpose is really to help people understand their goals and underlying perspective of why they want to do certain things. And also economically, and I think that is very important for me, that I've worked mostly with women most of my business life. I feel that I have this passion and longing, that has never left me to really understand why there is so much poverty, there's so many problems with black women globally. It's not just a local problem, but why is it that young black people have so many issues that they can't resolve economically? And I believe that my industry has got a role to play. A lot of people believe maybe that could be the role of people in financial services, that could be the role of people in economics and so forth. But I just believe that everything works together. And I believe that all industries work together to solve daily problems for everyday people.
So in that context, what are you currently involved in? What are you currently doing?
Yeah. My current business, which I've had, as I said, for 11 years, LFI, we do...
LFI?
Yes, Lepang Ferguson International. So we do communications. We work with women in understanding where they want to take their businesses. So it's pretty broad-based. A lot of it would be, your design and media, scaling your business in the branding department. So understanding, who your market is, developing strategies for communication and marketing. And I've been doing that for 11 years, but I still feel that's something I could do for another 11 years because I've seen the fruit of it. I've seen how, someone can start with a blank canvas and really kind of come out of their shell and start communicating their business a little bit differently.
Okay, just as a general question, the person that a lot of people look up to is Oprah Winfrey.
Yes.
Who's operating in that space.
Yes.
Is there anyone besides her who would say is a role model, the one you aspire to be like, or to perhaps to even surpass?
She is definitely one of them. I think when I went into the media industry, that is, who I was looking at. But I've also, I think I've followed a lot of news anchors, for instance, not only people in the news, I would say. I followed them because I was in the news. But people in the media industry, people like Basetsana Kumalo, I totally, I respect her. I followed her for many years. And because she was in my environment, she was relatable. So it was about finding relatable role models. As much as Oprah Winfrey as a black woman, I relate to what she's doing and what she's done and what she's been able to achieve. But I definitely feel that some of my local role models and people that I look to in terms of building my business, Precious Motsepe is also one of them. Because she, in the fashion industry, I've had to pretty much follow her when I was working with designers and within that industry as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
There could be a young woman or a young man watching and asking themselves, how do I go about creating a purpose-driven business from scratch?
Yes.
What advice would you give them?
Think about, if it's something that you would do for the long term. I think having a purpose is something that you're going to have to be committed to. Any kind of business has to be relevant to helping people in one way or the other. Whether you're feeding them, clothing them, giving them shelter, providing services and providing, I'd say logistics that people actually need. So there has to be a primary need for it. That is apart from, a lifestyle matter, but there has to be a primary need for you to create your business that is going to help people out. So even in technology, education, there's so many areas that are useful, that human beings need. We rely on medicine, we rely on food, we rely on shelter, we rely on transport. The things that we rely on are usually the things where people grow a lot more than what even they expect.
So do you, in your business, conduct workshops or seminars of any kind to inculcate this message or to spread this message among the young women you're trying to influence?
Absolutely. What I've been doing for the past, I'd say maybe about 14 years, I've always made myself useful to organizations that are in that space. So I don't operate within that space myself, but as a speaker, as somebody who tries to motivate and encourage people or even educate on certain aspects of what I know and what I understand a lot more. I've always put myself out there that I'm available to serve organizations in that regard.
Okay.
Yes.
Speaking about the media space, one person who comes to mind is obviously Steve Harvey.
Yes.
Who was here, is it a year or two ago?
Yes.
And there was a lot of noise around him. Did we as a country learn anything from him? Did we benefit from his coming here?
I don't know. I mean, I personally haven't. I think I have maybe from following him, how he's grown as an entrepreneur, as a media entrepreneur. I think I've learned several things from his business or his outlook on life. But I'm not sure what anyone did learn from him being here per se, because it was more or less what he does on a daily basis in his space anyway. I certainly didn't. I mean, I think it was pretty much on the same level that he operates in.
What HE was hoping to do is to have him work as a catalyst to inspire local media practitioners to actually set up businesses or content generating opportunities which they can monetize.
Yeah.
I think that was the purpose.
Yes.
So I thought you might have maybe taken a closer look to see whether any of that is happening.
I know that Maxwell was one of, Maxwell Dlamini is one of them, one of the entrepreneurs in the media industry who was selected for that. I didn't really get much information of what he was doing before I think he arrived in Botswana, which I think that the information was very limited, or the approach to giving out enough information of what he would be doing in that regard was pretty limited. But from what he has done in terms of providing that opportunity for people like Maxwell, I haven't really seen the feedback. So I don't really know what has happened since then.
I remember him commenting that the facilities we have at BTV were world class, they were unbelievable, and even suggesting that we're underutilizing them.
Yes.
Do you share that opinion? And if you do, what can be done about that situation?
I absolutely do. I think I'm of the belief that you can do, we have to maximize all of our opportunities. For anything that you're given, you can maximize on your potential to use it in a way that really does a lot more. And I believe that we've had the resources. We have the resources that can do a lot more for young people without necessarily spending any more. You know, if the facilities exist, why are we not using them? We're not using any more resources. We are looking for ways to innovate and ways to become more creative. And I think that we can't necessarily just have one format when there's so much space to use within broadcasting.
Okay. One of the things you emphasize is the importance of writing a vision, and perhaps you want to expound a little bit on that.
I think writing a vision down creates your roadmap. I've always written down absolutely everything. Since I was very young, probably in my mid-teens, I learned the power of actually writing things down. And I believe that, you know, the more I am able to turn back now and look at where I come from, I have a direct, I think, link to the things that I had written down 10, 15, 20 years ago. Writing down writing our visions establishes our foundation, and it keeps us accountable to our own goals. It keeps us accountable to even the people around us. So the environment also has a lot to do with, I mean, if someone was to say, you know, what have you, can I see your goals? You can't, if you haven't written them down, they can't help you. So writing really expounds on everything that we do. So whether you have, you know, I always have a notebook. I've had notebooks since I was 13 or 14. I always have them, and they're always full. Like I literally fill up a lot of notebooks every year, but that's because I write absolutely everything down. So I might hear something that you say and actually write it down as a pointer for something that I am going to keep as a point of reference.
Well, writing a vision is biblical. I mean, Habakkuk
Absolutely.
2, verse 2, I think,
Yes.
says write a vision down
Yes.
and run
Make
with
it plain.
But what also is might confuse people is the difference between vision and mission.
Yes.
You know, you have these you know, training sessions where somebody from outside would come, and then they would sit and go through exercises where the whole purpose is to come up with a mission statement.
Yes.
Can you explain to the viewer the difference, if any, and the role of each, mission versus vision?
Yes. I think the vision is pretty much on a macro level. So you're looking at the overall picture, you're looking at the big picture of what you want to achieve. And then your mission really helps you break it down into something that is actionable, into your goals, into how you can explain it to somebody that you're talking to or you're trying to get business from.
Okay. As someone in the media space,
Yes.
how has this business of writing a vision down specifically assisted you? Can you give examples?
I've been able to give myself different points of reference, and especially in understanding where I am at any point in time. So there's things that I've written down 5 years ago that are only working for me now, because I realized that the timing was also relevant. You know, timing is very crucial to how we work on our vision. Whatever it is that we have a plan for today might not be for today, it might be for 7 years down the line. And that is what I believe a vision really is. It is not something for tomorrow morning. It's something that is going to work for you in the long term, but you also have to create those actionable steps in your goals in order to meet that when the time actually arises.
I'm curious as to how you want to concretize it. I mean, you know, one thing we do in this program is to tell people specifics where we can.
Yeah. Planning. Planning is very imperative. When you have an idea concerning absolutely anything, you're going to have to write it down and then start understanding or training yourself in how you're going to be able to achieve that specific goal. So a lot of training, a lot of talking to people, a lot of networking, not limiting yourself to where you are right now. A lot of people, you know, don't go out or they don't spread their wings because they don't believe that they can fly yet. But, you know, flying is something that happens you know, in a process. You know, you don't go from ground level to a certain height without actually trying. So it is about, you know, attempting, and then attempting again, and then attempting again. So you're going to have to keep trying to do what it is that you set yourself forth to do over and over again, and surround yourself with an environment that is conducive for where you're trying to go.
So in your case, how did you position yourself, for instance, to become an anchor, a news anchor, for instance? That's not something to sneeze at. It's not really something that is really easy to attain.
Yes.
That's the sort of thing I want you to speak to.
Okay.
Yes.
That was a dream I had from a very early age. And it's something that I would also find myself just practicing, you know. And I know that this sounds almost a little bit lame, but I tend to practice what I do by myself. You know, what matters most in life is what you do when nobody's watching. I used to practice, you know, I wanted to have a talk show. What I wanted was to have a global talk show. As I said, you know, I loved Oprah Winfrey, I loved Basana Kumalo. I wanted to be able to present things to people. The content was not very important at that time. It was just about being it and doing it. So I practiced a lot. And when the opportunity came, I was ready. But I had never really been trained. I can't say that somebody trained me to do it. But I had already produced enough time to gain the confidence to be able to do it when the opportunity came.
What did you mean? You mean you're sitting in front of a mirror and mimicking
Yes.
other artists or other performers?
Not necessarily mimicking, but finding my own voice. Finding out, you know, if I can do it. And the more I did it, the more I challenged myself to do it. The more I realized that this is something that is inside of me, but it's how I approach it that's important.
Steve Harvey talks of a story of telling her teacher that he wants to be on TV.
Yes.
And getting himself, you know, basically chastised for that. What do you say to those dream killers who might be out there saying, you, Wanagas Mama, how can you possibly do that, achieve that?
I believe that where you are does not define you. Who you are defines you. Who you know yourself to be is what defines you. And most of the people around you, whether they are positive or negative, are catalysts for your growth anyway. You need opposition in order to build, I think, certain muscles or to build yourself up in confidence. You need a certain level of opposition so that you can challenge yourself. So I don't believe naysayers are necessarily bad. I believe that they help us grow. They help us become better. And also, you get to go home and challenge yourself on what the naysayers may be saying. So
they're only terrible if you believe them.
Pardon?
They're only terrible if you believe them.
Only if you believe it. Only if you believe it.
Or you get along with it.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, let's take this a bit further in terms of lessons from failure.
Yes.
It seems to me you are suggesting that failure is a natural progression of life. It's something we need to embrace.
That's it.
So I'm very curious to learn from you what lessons you've learned from failure, giving specific examples, chapter and verse. That's what I'm looking for.
I think that failure gives you an opportunity. You know, it gives you an opportunity to spend a lot more time in preparation. And I think that failure gives you a better foundation than success. I've learned more from failing than I have from succeeding. I've learned that my failures have given me the wisdom and the strength, and they've stretched me a lot further, because I'm not only trying to prove that I know what I know, but I'm going to do it. So whether I keep failing and failing and failing, at some point I do succeed at what I set forth before me. So I think that failure produces character. If you don't fail, you won't understand your character, and you won't even be able to present it in a particular way in front of those that are able to understand that you have learned something from your failures.
Please clarify that point with examples, specific examples.
Of people,
of failure and how it benefited you.
It made me work a lot harder. It made me work a lot harder. It
Yeah,
made
but
me
what
realize.
happened? I want specifics. I'm sorry, I'm going to push you on this one.
Failed businesses, failed ideas, failed relationships. They helped me understand myself.
So which business failed? What happened?
I can't say what happened. I think a lot was the timing. You see, what I learned from failure is that sometimes it's not that you're failing. Sometimes it's just that you're doing it at the wrong time. Sometimes you're just presenting something in the wrong way or to the wrong people. And you're not giving yourself enough time to understand what needs to be done in order for that specific thing
So there's
to
a business
actually
you
work.
started, you ventured into, but it wasn't
Yes.
the right time.
Absolutely.
You persevered, eventually it came right.
Yes.
Specifics, please.
I think that it is still a process. I've been in the media industry, as I've said. In terms of, I think being a news anchor, I believe that I did not give myself a lot more time to continue growing in the industry. I think I left it early when I thought, maybe this is all I was supposed to do in it, rather than take it a lot further. And we don't understand. I didn't
How
give
long were you
myself
in that space?
3 years. So I didn't give myself enough time to continue building myself up in that area, and seeing myself as an entrepreneur in that space. Because what I used to do is I would look for the opportunity that already existed. And sometimes your opportunity doesn't exist yet. You have to create it. So there was areas where I was not creating those opportunities for myself that I'm starting to understand, or I've understood in the past few years, that the opportunity still exists because now I can create it myself.
Okay.
Yes.
I suppose another way of asking the question is, what was the biggest challenge for you in terms of your experience as a news anchor?
The environment. I believe absolutely it was the environment.
What was wrong with it?
I think that sometimes our vision tends to be limited by people around us if we continue to stay in the same place, trying to prove the same point to the same people over and over and over again. It's only when we grow and when we allow ourselves to grow out of a small space to look at the bigger
Was it a
picture.
stifling environment?
Very stifling.
Oh.
Very limited. I believe it for me. I don't know if it's stifling or limited for anyone else, but it definitely was. I found that very limiting for me in terms of
Was it
what my
one-dimensional or even
content.
just two-dimensional? Because it wasn't.
Not really. It's just a matter of content. It's a matter of how you see the world, and if other people around you see the world the same way, and if they're willing to support you or be a support framework for what it is that you're trying to do.
So how did you break free from all that stifling environment, etc.?
I think that time and timing have also been a significant factor. 20 years ago, when I was learning about things like convergence and collaboration, it was a one-man show. People, no one around me knew what convergence was. They didn't know what collaboration was. These are things that have stemmed, I think, within our
I
environment.
understand collaboration, but I'm not sure I understand conversion.
Yeah. Convergence is the world we live in. The convergence of ideas coming together to create this unified response within a global framework. So, the fact that you have a YouTube channel, you are part of the converged world that we live in now, that we didn't have 20 years ago. But these were ideas that people were bringing forth and saying that the world is going to become more converged. I had read a book called The Theory of Convergence. I must have been about 18, 19, 20, around that time. And it was really talking about the world that's going to take, how the world is going to shape up going forward. But it was a step-by-step process, I believe. And that was one of the things that made me realize that I could be a visionary. I could set myself forward if I understand a concept in this on a certain level, and no one around me really does. It's really about building yourself up to get to that, to wait for the time that it does happen when you're ready to respond to it.
Okay. Equally important is learning from success.
Yes.
What lessons did you learn from success?
Humility and maintaining the relationships that helped you produce it. I think just being humble enough to know that I didn't do it on my own. I think the more I've succeeded, the more I realized that I needed so many people, so many factors around me to support me and to help me become who I am. So it was just being humble enough to appreciate the people and the opportunities that I've had in order to get to certain places.
And how do you go about, really enforcing that culture or that sense of humility and humbleness? How do you do it?
By giving back, by knowing that I am also a catalyst for somebody else. So, we pay it forward. If somebody has paid it forward for you, you pay it forward for somebody else, and we keep it going because generationally, I needed somebody who was there for me. Somebody else needs me to grow into whoever they need to be in a different generation. I may not understand it, but I may be a catalyst for it.
I read a post on LinkedIn recently. I think it was by a lady called, in fact it was by Precious Gondwe. I think
yes.
she's quite popular on LinkedIn. And it was something to the effect that women are not assisting each other enough. Yes. When a woman has found a platform, they are less likely than men to pull other women to that same level. Is that true? And if it is, how do you address it?
I think that it goes both ways. I don't see it as much of an issue because I've been helped by a lot of women. I've had a lot of assistance from women around me. So I cannot really allow myself to be in that particular bracket. Although I know that it happens, but I think that it is a human thing, and it's also a cultural phenomenon, really. If you think about it, I think it has a lot to do with our culture as well. I just see that Black people don't help each other as much as other cultures do. We're not open to the level of growth that we can attain in helping each other get to a certain level. I don't know if I can say that it's women per se, because I've had a lot of support from women, but I've also had a lot of setbacks caused by women. But I've had the same from men as well. I've had a lot of support from my male counterparts, but I've also had a lot of setbacks produced by male counterparts. So I think that there is, it's just really a human condition.
Okay. So in Botswana, still talking about lessons from success, is there anything you can point to in concrete terms that success has helped you attain that you'd otherwise not have attained? We're still talking about lessons from success.
I think family values. Family is definitely such a setup for succeeding. And the kind of family that you're from, if you have a supportive family, I am fortunate that I've got parents that are still together after 51 years, and I've understood the value of being part of that kind of a community and not giving up, and people not giving up on you, not giving up on yourself, not giving, there's people around you who won't allow you to give up on yourself, and there's people around you that will help you or support you or be there for you throughout your life. But that also comes from our foundations, and I believe that we as Botswana still really have that foundation that we can really take advantage of. We still have close relationships with not only our immediate families, but our relatives. We really still have the foundation of boto and relationships.
And still on that point, you're one of the few Botswana who I would say are second generation entrepreneurs.
Yes.
When we were prepping, you mentioned that you learnt entrepreneurship from your parents. You sucked it, as it were, from your mother's breast.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of indicating how important that has been in your life?
Yeah. I've been fortunate to have parents who worked together for my entire life. That's all I've known. I've always, since I was born, they were entrepreneurs. They've started their businesses. Some of them are still existing after about 40 years.
What businesses are these?
Dry cleaning businesses. And my father is also, he's invested a lot in other areas. And I think that, property, for instance, and land, I think that was always a big thing as far as he was concerned, and having something that belongs to you, not to depend on anyone. Really try to have assets that are yours, and assets that appreciate. So I was fortunate to have watched my parents, struggle sometimes, but make it. They were adamant, they were consistent, and they've been consistent throughout my life, and that's taught me a lot. And also the relationship that they had in being able to work together in building a legacy. So it was really about planning for me and planning for my children. This is what they have built, and that has taught me a lot more about how we create a legacy for our children and our children's children, is in setting ourselves up independently.
So did they actually bring you along to the dry clean and other things? Were you actually part of the
Absolutely.
activities?
I started working probably from the age of 8. We had a role to play. Whether you're coming in on Saturday morning to come and clean, to come and pack, to come and put the tags on clothing, it didn't matter what it was, but you were there every Saturday morning. We've been working since we were very young.
I think the next point we are going to discuss is very important for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Developing purpose-driven relationships.
Yes.
I want you to, unpack that a little bit using examples from your own life.
There's areas where I've had to understand that there are no coincidences or accidents. We come across a lot of people who have got experience that we could never attain in the amount of time that we want to attain it. And I believe that it's always important to find out who has achieved at least something that you want to achieve, and follow them. Whether you give them a call and say, I want to meet you, or you try to at least understand how they do certain things. That is still a relationship. And I found myself always being, I think, fortunate enough to find myself in spaces where I would meet the people that I admired the most, and people who would allow me to be myself and allow me to dream a little more in achieving certain things that I've been able to do, whether it is through going for an award or pitching for an idea. I've gotten countless awards throughout my life.
Tell me about a few of those.
Yes, I was a student ambassador. So I was a student ambassador for Africa while I was in Australia, and that was an initiative founded by John Howard, who was a former Prime Minister of Australia. So the two premiers, so I did it consecutively. In fact, I applied, someone came to me that I had been helping out with something. I had been volunteering to work for the African department in my school since I started. And once and the more I interacted with this particular woman, the more she realized that there was opportunities beyond what I was doing. And she helped me apply for this.
Which woman is this?
Her name was Vicky. And she was actually a student as well at that time, but she was running African affairs in our school. So I applied for this, it was an opportunity that was not only for Africans, but it was for people all around the world. But I represented Africa in Australia as an ambassador for students that was given to me by Prime Minister John Howard. Things like the Mandela Washington Fellowship, I did that as well. Yes, in 2015. And that was also encouragement from a friend of mine.
Where did you go?
I was in Atlanta, and I was in Berkeley and San Francisco. So it was just an opportunity that came up that somebody recognized could be an opportunity for me, and said, you have to do this, and I will not allow you not to apply. And so I did, and it was good for me.
And how did it impact your life?
The relationships and the networks that I've been able to produce, and long-term relationships, being able to harness those relationships for things I am doing now, such as publishing, and being able to use those connections, for instance, in selling my books in the US.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going to talk about your books in a minute, but I want you to talk about relationships, even in terms of spousal relationships or intimate relationships, the importance of finding a purpose-driven spouse, for
Yes.
instance? Is this something you've thought about?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm divorced, and I've been divorced for 11 years. For 11 years now. I got married also very young, without having thought about the purpose of marriage for myself in terms of growing. I wanted to have a family. I've always wanted to have a family. And I believe that because I grew up in a family that was together. So I've seen what family is, not only with my parents, but with my uncles and aunts and all of that. So I saw myself living the same kind of life. And that was just what I set for myself, without thinking about who I was as an individual and what I wanted to attain. And if the person that I was getting married to actually had the same vision I had, and would be able to accommodate who I was as a person. So I definitely believe that every relationship is purpose-driven, but the marriage relationship is even more so, because this is a person that you partner with and you become one in driving your legacy forward for your children and your children's
Are you
children.
encouraging the youngsters to have a questionnaire submitted to a potential future spouse?
Yes, I think you need to. I think you need to know who you are. You need to know what you want to achieve. You need to know, your purpose and understand where you're going as a person. So the more you are able to give yourself, time and a perspective for your own life, the chances are, as time goes on and you're learning, different people and understanding who people are, you might just get it right.
Yeah, it's an important point. Maybe I need to invite you again, because I was going to ask you whether it's something that you can develop as the
Yes.
relationship grows. In other words, your spouse can grow into your purpose, or you can drag them along, as
Yes.
it were, and then eventually they'll embrace your purpose.
Absolutely. It has a lot to do with, I think, foundation. For me, I believe the foundation that I would want is a spiritual foundation. I am a Christian. I want to get married to a Christian. There's no doubt about that, and there is no compromise as far as I'm concerned. And there has to be something that gives you both an opportunity to have a willingness to participate at a certain level in that person's life. And is this person willing to sacrifice a lot to allow you to be who you are, and are you willing to do the same? So it's really about sacrifice. A lot of people say compromise. I don't believe compromise works in a relationship. I believe that it's more sacrificial than it really is about compromising, because we change and we grow as we get to know each other, or as we get to live with one another. So it's not much about compromising. It's really about making those sacrifices and understanding that your partner makes the same sacrifices for you, so that you get to the place where you're supposed to.
Before we talk about the freedom to grow,
Yes.
let's talk about this book.
Yes.
What inspired this book, and what is it about?
Wildflower Season is a book about women activists. It's a book about a woman who generationally within her family is interested in impacting her community. So she gets a group of women together to say, this is what I believe we need to do. But it was about, these divine occurrences, divine opportunities in meeting this group of women and actually putting them together to achieve a certain goal.
What inspired you to write a novel?
I didn't know that I was going to write. I knew that I was going to write, but I never thought I would want to write a novel.
And a thick one at that. Well, not thick in a bad way, 347 pages.
Yeah, but I think writing made me understand that I am a creative first. I'm a creative person first. More than anything else, I am creative. And I wanted to use that vehicle to create something that I would be proud of. And it led to writing something fictional, which stemmed from my creativity.
I often talk to entrepreneurs, and I encourage them to read personal development books.
Yes.
Which are normally not fiction.
Yeah.
And can you make an argument why we should make an exception for your book?
We need rest. And we learn from human stories. I've learned more from human stories than I have from, human stories, in the sense that they've been related to me, even fictionally. As I said, I'm a creative person, and I would be inclined to follow the creative industry a lot more than anything else. But I do read everything. But we also need time to recapture our imagination, and I think fiction really does that in terms of producing a level of creativity and also just rest for the soul and for the mind.
If the reader is interested in this book, where do they
Yes.
find it?
They can get onto my website, which is lepangferguson.com, or send an email to info@lepangferguson.com. All of my social media handles are Lepang Ferguson, so you can find me on there. But you can get on our website and get information about ordering the books, and you can get it on Amazon. I mean, in Botswana, you can find it locally, but
Can you find
anywhere
it
else,
exclusive books?
no. One of the reasons why I did not go retail was basically because of, I wrote my book during the COVID era.
Really?
Yes, so I
Just
wrote it
last
last
year?
year, absolutely. And one of the things that I found out early, or realized early, was that access was becoming very, very limited. And technology is really taking up that space. So I have been in talks, I think, with some, or having some opportunity to retail my book online.
We have
as
good
opposed
publishers
to,
like this. Who published it for you?
this is actually self-published as well.
Okay.
So it's self-published, self-designed. As I said, I'm a designer, and I've used as
nice.
much of my creativity as I could on this book.
Okay.
But you can get it on Amazon if you just look for Wildflower Season or Lepang Ferguson on Amazon.
Okay. Let's talk about maintaining to grow and the passion thing. You
Yes.
touched on it. Can you cover those two subjects?
I think that passion, there'll be times in your life when you don't feel passionate about what you do. Especially if you're just constantly just working and going and going and going and going. Life's responsibilities, I've got parents, I've got elderly parents, I've got children, I've got 2 daughters. And sometimes these kind of responsibilities can weigh down our passion for producing things that we want to. And I think you need to find a balance between your daily responsibilities and what it is that really makes you happy, and what it is that really gives you that bliss and that opportunity to be more of yourself, and try to strike a balance. So as you go along, there'll be times you don't feel so passionate. I mean, I did not feel so passionate about writing. I did not feel so passionate about my business sometimes. But
So passion is overrated, is it?
passion can be overrated because sometimes responsibility takes over. So, always understanding that you need to give yourself some self-time and self-care to get back to the place where you're passionate about whatever it is that you're doing.
Okay. And then the freedom to grow?
Allowing yourself to grow. You need the freedom to be who you are, and to be around individuals, or to be in an environment that harnesses that level of freedom in really saying, this is who I am, this is
Because
how
you're
I
implying
present
by
myself.
saying you need the freedom to grow. You're implying that generally people are incapacitated from growing, or they somehow, need to be freed. They need to be emancipated. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. There are times where we get stuck, and we're not giving ourselves the freedom to grow beyond where we are stuck or where we are challenged. So I think it has a lot to do with knowing that you actually have the liberty and the freedom. If it's not working out in this department, you can move. If it's not working out in this thing, you can move. If it's not working out in your environment, you can move. Understand that you've got the opportunity each and every
So
time.
how do you unstuck yourself? Because most of it is really mental, isn't it? How do you
It's-
get yourself out of the mental rut?
By giving yourself time, giving yourself the liberty not to have to even explain it to the next person.
Okay. Just going for it again. I
Yes,
suppose.
just going for
All
it.
right. You've touched on this many times, timing,
Yes.
and you've really spoken to it in the context of, you failing and waking up, having to do with timing. Is there some kind of crystal ball that we could have to determine the right timing? Or are there some signs that we can rely on to determine the right timing?
I think that timing is really about you having a deeper perspective about your life and being able to grab opportunities as they arise. You know, we miss a lot of opportunities by sometimes feeling that we're not even ready. If I had thought about my readiness in writing my book, I wouldn't have written it. I did not feel ready. I realized that it was time to write my book, and I wrote it, whether or not I felt ready or not. So sometimes opportunities come into our lives and we may not feel that we're necessarily ready for them, but that might be the opportunity that actually helps you to grow. So time, you know, you need to be able to have a deeper perspective about your life, and you know, think about if you have the will to do it. You know, it's not necessarily about having the strength and so forth, because I think as you go on, you develop the strength and the character to be able to do certain things. But you need to also latch onto opportunities as they arise, and that might be the perfect time for it.
I've heard some people say that it's often not about resources, it's about resourcefulness.
Yes.
What is your take on that in the context of timing?
Yeah. You can do anything with very little. You know, most people want to sit down and calculate first before they start something, without starting it and then understanding what it is that they need for it. A lot of people have said, I can't start a business because I don't have money, but they haven't thought about the fact that they may not actually need a lot of money to start that business, because they haven't gone out and actually started and found out and gotten enough information of whether or not money is actually what they need. So you can do, you know, I believe that there's a lot you can do with very little if you have the will and if you're willing to actually attempt and try.
Okay. Let's address the question of being of service to others.
Yeah.
How have you, Lepang Ferguson,
Yes.
being of service to others, and how do you propose to continue being of service?
One of my greatest desires was always, as I said, to work with women and with girls. And I found myself always gravitating towards that in providing my time to organizations or to people that I believe needed whatever my narrative was at any point in time. So I've been volunteering most of my life. One thing that I learned at
Can you say that again? Because I think the listener needs to hear that. You've been doing what?
I've been volunteering.
Wow.
One of the things I learned very early on is to do something whether you're going to get paid for it or not. If somebody needs it, and if it's going to elevate something around whether that person or even an environment. And volunteering is something that has helped me more than working for money. I have benefited more and gotten more support from the people that I have volunteered with than I have in the work environment where I was getting paid a salary. So I volunteered throughout school. I'd volunteer for tuck shop, I'd volunteer in the library, I'd volunteer for cleaning the grounds, I'd volunteer for being a cheerleader, just going and cheering the rugby team in if we were having away games. I volunteered my whole life to do anything and everything as long as I was doing something useful.
What do you say to those who say that attitude sets you up for being exploited?
You can be exploited. There's areas where you can be exploited, but I think that as I've learned, I've gained a lot more from volunteering because I found myself in the right place at the right time in those areas.
Okay, a lot of the people who might be watching us
Yes.
are unemployed. COVID hasn't helped either. What did you say to them in terms of them getting up and adopting that spirit of volunteerism?
Yes. I think that, one of the things that I've been doing this month especially is I've been putting up posts, for instance, on my Instagram about stewardship. Mainly because I think I just had a revelation about the stewardship of time. Most people think that being a good steward is only stewarding your resources and not realizing that time is the most useful resource that you will ever have. And most young people may say they're unemployed, but they spend half their time on social media, not necessarily selling anything or trying to find avenues for getting involved or even volunteering in places that they don't have to get paid in, but they can learn something.
And get exposure.
And get the support that they need. You never know who you're going to meet. And it's important to always be out there doing something all the time. If you're young, if you're able, don't spend half your time just indoors on social media or thinking an opportunity is going to come and find you. You actually have to go out looking for it.
So I really love this message. Basically, your message is you're not a steward only in terms of physical resources.
Yes.
You're a steward insofar as your time is concerned. So if you are just wasting your time
yes.
on maybe on Netflix watching,
yes.
binge watching movies,
Absolutely.
for instance, that's really being a bad steward.
That's it. You know, like I said before, what matters the most is not your public life. It's your private life. It's how you use your time when you're at home. It's how you reason with your life behind closed doors when nobody's watching, because we can be anyone when people are watching us. But who are you when you're by yourself? Those are the things that you need to, I think, ask yourself as a human being. That will dictate where you're going to go and who you present yourself as in the public sphere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot of the points we wanted to cover. Here's your chance to shoot a question at me. Yes. Go ahead.
I know that you're a lawyer by profession, you know, and you're obviously an entrepreneur. You've been able to go into an industry which I believe has got so many layers. It's not just property, but it's also property development, lifestyle, construction, and also having ownership of land. I think that a lot of young people don't understand what it takes or the opportunities that we have available to create that for yourself. And one of the things that I did want to ask you is how you were able, you know, to put that all together and how long it took, because sometimes we may be looking at you and saying, oh, there's suddenly a building and it's called Mogobe, you know, Plaza, and it was built within a year and so forth, but they don't realize, maybe we don't probably realize how long it took you to do it. And I've heard this from another entrepreneur that, you know, my overnight success took 20 years. How did you get from that place of starting off as a lawyer to becoming an entrepreneur in real estate and construction?
That's a brilliant question. I think I've answered different iterations of that question, but the way to answer it for you would be like this. We're a work in progress. We would like to set ourselves goals. So at any given time, we'll have 5 to 10 or even 20-year goals. And that has come over time. The most important thing is what happens between your ears.
Yes.
In terms of that piece of real estate right here.
Yes.
In terms of your mindset, in terms of your thinking. So I was fortunate early to discover the importance of personal development.
Yes.
And I embarked it as an activity, as a deliberate activity. There's a time I used to read a book per week, sort of thing. And I realized that, look, if I don't develop myself mentally to be able to deal with the inevitable problems that come with growth, because growth means problems, and the problems get bigger and bigger as you grow. If you're not positioning yourself to absorb the difficulties that come with those problems, then your growth will be thwarted. In fact, it will be reversed. So it took 3 decades. As a lawyer, I've been practicing for 33 years now, and as an entrepreneur, I would say it's 20 years plus, because Mogobe Incorporated was formed in the late 90s.
Okay.
And it started its first project around 99 or thereabouts.
Okay.
So it's a long-term project, and you are right. My overnight success has taken 3 decades.
Yes.
So people see what they might see now, they interpret what they are interpreting now. My attitude is that it's only getting started, and God does not put limits
Yes.
on our abilities to achieve. So I hope that covers most of your question.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you took advantage, I'd say, of the fact that there was a development, which was this new CBD.
Well, that happened around 07.
Okay.
Actually, we made 2 attempts. We tried the first time around 04 with a group of others, and I tried to apply through Richard Ellis. That didn't work out. We didn't even get an acknowledgement. And then 07, we found that there are more properties that are being availed for tender.
Okay.
So it was a tender process. We
Okay.
picked it up from the Gazette, and my mentor helped me. My mentor at the time, Mr. Jamali.
Okay.
So he helped me in terms of direct my attention to the tender.
Yes.
So that's what happened, and we're fortunate enough to have this beautiful piece of land right in the center of the CBD. We're hoping to actually develop it. Our architects are working on a development which would take about 500 million in terms of getting a 20-story structure out there. So there's still room for growth.
Yes.
The only reason probably we haven't taken it further is COVID and the fact that we have other projects which we're still working on.
So you actually really went out to hunt it down.
Yes.
Yes. You didn't wait for it.
It doesn't come to you. It
That's
never
it.
comes to you.
That's it.
It will not come to you sitting on your laurels.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to seek it.
That's it.
Yes. Okay, so this is a part
Awesome.
of the interview where you now look at that camera
Okay.
and say words of wisdom, parting words of wisdom, motivational, inspirational words to that young entrepreneur, be a young gentleman or a young lady out there.
Absolutely.
And maybe say something also about your book. Yes, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I've already spoken about before is that you're not going to be able to achieve anything if you're just sitting at home and hoping that it's going to come to you. One of the things that I've always done is volunteer. Volunteering helps you build credible relationships, people who you don't only trust, but they also trust you. And they trust you if you're using your time for good service. So always understand that every opportunity that you get is because you've gone out looking for it. Whether it's going to benefit you in terms of your finances, your relationships, or it's going to help you grow as an individual. So you're going to learn something from it. Don't be limited to how far or how wide you can actually go. Don't think that your opportunities are only local. So you might also be looking for only local opportunities where you should be operating globally. Never limit yourself based on where you are. You know, your limit is as far as you draw it. So you've got a blank canvas and you can do absolutely anything and everything that you desire to do, but just understand that it's also a process. It took me a long time to write my book. It took me a long time to have the relationships that I have now. But one of the things that you will have to do is be committed. You're going to have to use your time to benefit yourself. I wrote this book in a very short period of time, but it's because I had been planning it for a season. So the season of planning benefited me because by the time I wrote the book, I already knew what I was doing. And a lot more opportunities are springing out of it. But those are all things I had been writing down. Nothing is happening by accident. This has all been, I think, a divine plan. It's been a process of learning and unraveling myself, unraveling my own confidence, my approach to life, and meeting the right people as they come at the right time for whatever it is that you have to do. So never limit yourself based on where you are. The sky is the limit. I don't even think that the sky is the limit. I believe that heaven is the limit. You can go as far as you want, really. You know, the sky is only what we see, but what about the invisible? What about what we don't see? So you have got the imagination to be able to create absolutely anything and everything for yourself, but it's also a process, and be patient with yourself.
Okay. Can you share with them if you have any products to not to to sell? I mean, let's have no shame about sales. Any product you wish to sell, maybe beyond the book.
Yes.
And then also, how do people contact you?
I have been volunteering as usual for speaking engagements, especially with young people and with schools. I'm very, very passionate about catching them young. So schools are very, very important to me in terms of how we volunteer. And I don't only want to volunteer with private schools. I want to go as far as I can go, because I believe that, you know, we always think that the government is doing nothing, but we are also not participating. So one of the things that I really encourage myself on a daily basis to do is go out looking for opportunities to be of service to others. In terms of my book, in terms of you know, organizations being able to procure my services, because obviously there are commercial organizations that have the opportunity to procure my services as a speaker, as somebody who's able to come and either teach or educate or speak about certain things concerning my career and my experience. You know, you can go to my website. My personal one is lepangferguson.com or the lfigroup.com. So both our emails are on our website, and you can just get in touch with us.
You can still share your email.
Yeah,
now.
my email address is lepang@thelfigroup.com and info@lepangferguson.com. So you can get us on both.
Thank you very much. You've
Thank
been a
you so
wonderful
much.
guest. You've been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I
for
appreciate
taking the time
it.
out.
Thank you.
Cheers.